because I want to understand what triggered you to really join mobility that early, because you were really, really early. So that's really interesting to know. So please tell us.
Well, Constantine, I originally came out of the press. I was in the media. I worked for quite a few years at Business Week magazine, which was the main American business news weekly. So I had a real interest in entrepreneurship and business and big economic trends. And I was actually the Europe editor of Business Week. And so one of the things that has really fascinated me all my life, and I have a big passion for, are cities. I grew up in the heart of New York City in Manhattan. I've always lived in cities. Cities are where big ideas take place, big economic and societal trends take place. So, and I think if I look at my life, I think that's been the one sort of big trend throughout is this fascination with cities and how they develop in time. So I left the press. I left Business Week in about 2005, about 15 years ago, and I think I saw the writing on the wall for the print press. Luckily,
it was destined to happen, right?
It was destined to happen, but I think I kind of anticipated it. Luckily, I suppose. But it was also I wanted to do something different, and I was approached by a very big French communication conglomerate called Publicis, which is one of the big forces in global advertising and media.
Yep.
And they had grown very quickly to be an international company, but was still managed as a kind of French concern. So I think they wanted someone who knew the world, who was at home in Europe, but also in the United States, etc. So I joined them as head of public affairs and international strategy. And then after a couple of years, I was offered a job to run one of the big subsidiaries of this company in Geneva, Switzerland, which produces the World Economic Forum in Davos. So I wound up in the top job in Davos, putting together people and companies and countries and global leaders, etc. And it was really terrific. It was kind of the high point of the World Economic Forum in Davos, where we have, Mark Zuckerberg would come with the King of Jordan and Yasser Arafat, and it was all absolutely fascinating and great fun.
Yeah.
But it coincided with more and more in my thinking, why were urban leaders not present at the conversation in Davos?
Exactly.
And I really kind of pushed for that to happen. I think it wasn't quite the moment. I felt that the big new trend was cities, the future of cities, and how cities were being impacted by the digital revolution, by the internet, by connectivity technologies, etc. But it was, I think, it was in a way, timing is everything in life. So I think it was a little bit too early for the World Economic Forum to kind of understand that big trend. So I felt that the idea of bringing together public sector leaders, private sector leaders, sector experts to look at big problems, which is the kind of World Economic Forum methodology, was very well adapted to the city. Nobody owns the city.
Okay.
So I decided to launch my own nonprofit foundation, institution called the New Cities Foundation, to look at the impact of new technologies on city building throughout the world. And we hit the ground running. We had a lot of support from some corporate tech corporates like Cisco, Ericsson, General Electric, and others. And so I think we anticipated this sort of smart city trend that was just starting to happen. So I ran this new institution.
And that was around 2010, right?
Yes, around 2010, exactly. And wow. When you look at cities, you very, very quickly come to the mobility and transportation scene. So one of our first, and this is way before micromobility, way before autonomous vehicles, etc. But one of our first projects was with the city of San Jose in Silicon Valley, and Ericsson in Sweden, and the University of California in Berkeley. We kind of put all of these three groups together for a year-long study on commuting and looking at how new social media platforms like Facebook, etc., which were very new at that time, could positively influence commuting and commuting behavior. You know, it was getting our toes wet in the mobility field. And then Google, as you remember, was starting to invest very, very heavily in autonomous
They
driving.
also invested in Uber. Yeah, I think
this was before. Well, no, this is before Uber, and this is so. Google has a unit called Google X, which is their moonshot program, and so they started looking at autonomy. It was the first really concerted effort anywhere in the world in autonomous mobility. So they were investing very heavily, and they wanted to understand, I think, how autonomy in the future would fit into an urban context, autonomous mobility. And so they knocked on our door. We were very happy to bring in Google as a member and to talk about this subject with them, because it's very interesting. And it was really exactly at the same time that Uber, in fact, was still a small San Francisco-based startup that developed an application for calling up chauffeur-driven cars, and they had just started offering services in New York at the time. And I think it was that combination of autonomous mobility via Google, ride-hailing via Uber. We suddenly thought, wow, this is going to be one of the biggest mega trends of all time. This was essentially we saw that there would be a massive wave of disruption in mobility and transportation, that every city in the world, big and small, would be impacted. So as an organization that looks at cities, we had to understand what was going on. So we decided to organize a small, very high-level conference that brought together some of the key people who were working in future urban mobility. And Google actually liked the idea a lot, so we organized the first gathering at Mountain View in California at their headquarters. And it was really one of the first times anywhere in the world that people working in autonomy were meeting people in battery electric, were meeting people in mobility as a service. This is before micromobility. I mean, this is before.
Way before.
And then
before the early days.
It was early days, and it was absolutely electric. I mean, it was so fascinating. And so we decided to, at the New Cities Foundation, launch a research program on connected mobility. We had another convening in London and then in Tokyo. And so we were gathering kind of our expertise, et cetera, in the field. And then I started looking at Los Angeles, which is a city that I really didn't know that well. And as a New Yorker, I always kind of hated Los Angeles, too many cars, et cetera. It wasn't a city I understood. But in 2015, the city council in Los Angeles adopted something called the 2035 Mobility Plan, which was a look 20 years into the future at what LA would be. And it was essentially a blueprint for post-car Los Angeles. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. We came out to LA and we realized this is a city that really starting to have a vision. It was, some of the worst traffic in the world, smog, and it's a city completely built around the motor car, but was starting to think seriously about what comes after the car. And so we thought, why don't we take this itinerant high-level conference, move it to Los Angeles, and build it out in a kind of South by Southwest or Davos way, and bring together the key stakeholders in mobility, both public and private. And that led to the launch of Comotion in 2017. And we spun that out of the foundation into a separate entity. And it's been a big success since then. I think we were probably one of the first movers in the space. And it was, in 2017, we had our first Comotion LA conference. And it was literally maybe 2 months or so after Bird.
I know. I saw the videos and the pictures of all the micromobility operators there in LA.
Yeah.
And I was so jealous because I wanted to be there.
And so it was really like 2 months after Bird launched in Santa Monica, which is in Los Angeles. And so, we were right at the beginning of the micromobility revolution, which of course is taken off, and it's in every city in the world now. Just about.
Exactly. Now,